always have to test out the audio. Hello, hello. So my mic don't be close enough these days. Hello, 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 hello. Okay, I think that's good. And testing. Okay, I think that sounds good. Let me, oops, get back to my little outline here. I'm loving my little setup. I have my iPad right here, which you guys can't see, but it's on like a little stand, and then I literally lay it down flat so I can like look at it and refer to it. And I love that for me. Okay, I think I'm ready to rid of these headphones. And let me do one last shake to make sure everything's recording. Yep, yep. And then let me see. Oh, and I'm right on time. This is the exact time I said I was going to start recording. You love an on-time queen. Okay, let's go ahead and get into it. Ready and action.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Subjective Podcast. I'm your host, Danielle, and today we have a very special episode, per usual. However, before we get into that, let's do a little pre-gaming, a little setting of the scene, some housekeeping things. It is the weekend once again. It's a little gloomy out. I think it's calling for rain, but I have already had like a full day and it's only 2 o'clock. So I have already went on a morning walk. I went and got some coffee. I made myself a little breakfast. I then went and took Nova on a separate walk. I cleaned up my kitchen, reorganized my second bedroom a little bit, and I did my makeup. I got dressed, and now I'm sitting down to do this podcast. So I'm feeling very productive. However, that's not important because if you are watching this on YouTube and you have not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. And if you are listening on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts, please subscribe so that every time I upload a new episode, it will automatically download to your feed and you can listen. No extra work required. In addition, as always, if you want to see more of the podcast, see clips, stay up to date on all of the things, follow me on TikTok and Instagram at The Subjective Podcast. And I also have a Facebook page where I post there. I also have a Substack where I post there. I have not posted in a few weeks because I just haven't had a lot of time. But I want to get back to posting on there. And other than that, if you have not already, submit to WWDD, What Would Danielle Do? Any advice you need, any life mishaps, anything that you need a little outside input on, submit it there. And I will read your dilemma on the podcast and give you some advice. Other than that, if you have not listened to my last episode, make sure that you go and listen there, catch up on all of the things before you sign out for the day, and then we'll be good to go. So, with that being said, I have something to say. So, anyone that knows me, okay, or anyone that has known me for a long period of time, then you know that in every era of my life, there is literally one thing that has stayed extremely consistent. And that is that I have always been me. I have always been myself. And if you have known me since I was a toddler to now, you really understand exactly what I'm talking about. And I have always been known to have like a really big personality, which can be good for some and it can be bad for others. So even when I wasn't celebrated, or even when it wasn't safe, or even when it cost me my comfort, my connection, friendships, relationships, and even my peace, I've always been me. And today, I really wanted to talk about the courage that it takes to be yourself when it's easier to perform or change or be someone that you're not. I wanted to talk about the loneliness that comes from being misunderstood, especially when you have maybe a less than conventional personality, or maybe you're just someone that people are not used to seeing or interacting with every day. And I want to also talk about the legacy and the personal brand that you build when you do choose to be yourself in spite of. This episode is going to be all about showing up 100% authentic, loud, honest, in your whole entire self in every situation, in every area of your life, even when the world or the people that are around you try to convince you to be quiet, to be smaller, to be easier, to be less difficult, whatever it is that they want you to conform to. So, this is a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. So, I kind of mentioned this already, but I have spent a lot of time just thinking about how I became me, how I became Danielle, how I became myself, how I got this personality and these character traits, all of those things. Because when I look around and when I think about, my family, my friends, the people who I grew up with, anyone that has kind of had a key part in raising me into the person that I am, I have always been the outlier. And so I know that the person that I am was not taught. And what I mean by that is if I think about my mom and my brother, who are kind of the main people that I was around as a young person during like those pivotal years where you are developing into your own person. My mom and my brother are the complete opposite of me. I would really describe myself as very outspoken, very direct, very blunt, very much myself. Sometimes it's really hard to explain because when I think about it, I'm like, I'm literally just myself. It's hard to put it into words, but I'm thinking if other people would describe me, that is some of the words that they would use. I'm very vocal, and there's not a lot of things that I hold back on or that I don't say. And my mom and my brother are the opposite. So they're a lot more, I wouldn't say quiet, but just not me. Like they're not the way that I am. And so I always would think about like, how did I become like this? Because it wasn't like someone set this example or it's something that I seen. It literally is just who I was born as long as I can remember. And I feel like anyone else would tell you that too. And I didn't grow into any of that, honestly. I was literally born into it. And I was the little girl who asked questions that adults didn't want to answer. I stood up for myself since I was a toddler. I talked back. I literally couldn't sit still when something didn't make sense. And some people would say that I had an attitude when really I personally feel like it was just clarity that they weren't ready for. And back then, and even sometimes now, they didn't really call that authenticity. Like as a kid, you were not called that. You were not supposed to be asking questions because your parents or someone else said so. If they told you to do something, they didn't want you to ask questions or say why. That always was perceived as a negative thing, right? And I feel like as a child, that meant that you were being difficult, or like I said, you had a bad attitude. And when you're a child who tells the truth or you speak up for yourself, you don't get labeled as bold or brave or anything that's really positive. You end up getting labeled as the disrespectful child. So At school, my teachers would probably say I was disruptive. At home, I was too much. In friendships, maybe a little dramatic or whatever the case may be. And even back then, like before I had any type of language for it, I just knew that I only knew how to be me. And I was like, I think it got to a point at one time where like I wasn't proud of that and I wasn't happy about that because the way that I was or my personality, it never was perceived as a good thing, especially to adults and being a kid. And I just felt like, and I still feel like, and I just knew that God didn't make me like this for no reason. Like there had to be a reason for all of this razzle dazzle that came with me. And when you have a really big presence, you don't get labeled as confident. They're going to call you fast or grown or difficult or say that you're not staying in a child's place. And I have always been very loud, very curious, very unfiltered, very honest, very blunt. And honestly, it always was the kind of honesty that could literally make a room shift, make people stop in their tracks, make people do a double take and be like, what did that girl just say? And not because people loved it, but because they literally didn't expect it, especially from a child. Like, I remember there's like me and my mom talk about this sometimes, and I remember her telling me that sometimes, like when I was a kid and I would just say things unfiltered to people, that sometimes it would be a little embarrassing to her because it's like, this is my child and she's just saying some off the wall shit or literally telling someone that their outfit wasn't nice. And it would be like shocking for other people, but also for her, it was like, oh my God, she's done it again. Like, it did not make sense for some of the things that I was saying to be coming from a child. And very early on, I feel like I realized like every space could not hold that, every space could not accept what was me, essentially. And with that, the truth is, I wasn't rewarded for being real. I feel like I was punished for it. Like everything that I ever got in trouble with had to do with something that I said. I didn't just do bad shit like kids do. Like I just talked back to my teachers or I said something that wasn't maybe nice or whatever the case is, and that is what I would get in trouble for. And I remember like when I was younger, people used to tell me that I would make a great lawyer to the point where I literally planned for that to be my career all the way up until I got in college, which when someone is telling a younger person that they would make a good lawyer, it's really just a fun way for them to say that you're a bitch. Like they can't call you that as a child, so they'll just say, "Oh, you'll make such a great lawyer one day." Okay. But let me be very clear. Being me really it didn't come without a cost. And sometimes it still doesn't come without a cost. And I still know that, even at age 30 that it's going to cost me in some ways that I haven't even seen yet or that I haven't experienced yet. Like I remember when I was younger, my brother was always telling me how I was going to get beat up. Like, oh, I would be in elementary school and he'd be like, when you get to middle school, you're going to end up getting beat up. When you get to high school, you're going to end up getting beat up. I think he stopped saying it after that because he never said that I was going to get beat up in college. But I feel like there were rooms where my honesty and my outspokenness really made people uncomfortable. And I think I get it a little bit more because most people aren't honest and most people aren't going to say what other people are thinking. And so there were a lot of times where I was in friendships and my presence was a threat. And that was not because I intentionally would try to dominate, but I think it was just because I refused to perform or do the opposite of that. And I feel like I learned early on, and even just in my life, that being authentic doesn't always get you an applause or a clap. Like, it really attracts resistance. And a lot of times people just don't like that. And for me, a lot of times it meant being left out, or people didn't like me, or I was labeled as mean, which sometimes I was. Like, I'm not even gonna hold you on that one, but it became a label. And I feel like people probably talked about it, and you almost feel like othered because you are literally just being yourself. And I just feel like when you're in spaces and it doesn't feel safe to be yourself, um, it just gets exhausting is what I'm trying to say. And I've always been the kind of person who I am going to be the one who raises my hand in class. I'm going to be the one that asks the challenging or hard questions. Every class that I've been in, I feel like I'm always the person that has to ask a question. If I am in a math class and I don't get it and the teacher's explaining it, like, I'm not going to stop asking questions until I get it. And sometimes that annoys other people in the class who do get it, but then other times, and a lot of times I've seen where I asked the question that everyone else had, but they just for some reason were afraid to ask it. And so it's always been that. I've always been the person who's gonna address the elephant in the room or break the awkward silence in the room. And when you look around in those type of situations and you realize, like, oh shit, I'm the only one standing up. I'm the only one who's saying something. And so I just think about how my entire life, like, I can think of all of the things that I've been called. I've been called a big mouth. I've been told that I talk too much. I actually got most talkative in high school. I've been told I'm too opinionated. I've gotten that I'm dramatic more times than I can remember. I have been told that I just needed to calm down, to lower my voice, stop asking questions, all of the things. And not because I was lying or saying something that was wrong. And most of the time, I wasn't just speaking up or saying something for no reason, but I feel like I've always just had the nerve to say what everyone else was thinking, but they were afraid to say. And I feel like people just hate when you force them to confront any type of truth that they hoped would stay silent. And one of my biggest pet peeves and one of my biggest struggles with being the person that I am, the outspoken person, the person who's going to ask the questions, the person who is going to challenge the narrative or whatever the case may be, I feel like it just gives everyone else in the room, in the friendship, in the group, a chance to stay comfortable. Everyone else gets to benefit from you speaking up while you end up getting labeled the problem or the difficult one. And sometimes I have so much resentment with other people that I'm around. One, because it becomes an expectation. So people are always looking to you to be the person that speaks up. And then two, again, they get to benefit from it in their comfort zone. And what I mean by that is, like, I have been in so many situations, even like at work, on my job, in friendship groups, or whatever the case may be, where it's like, say we're in a friendship group and everyone sees a problem with this one person and we're all talking about it amongst ourselves, but I'll be the only person to address that one person, where it looks like I'm the problem starter, but then in the background everyone else is saying, oh yeah, I feel that way, but they won't speak up in the moment. and they won't take up for you in the moment or have your back or say, oh no, what Danielle is saying is correct. I also agree with that. And this has happened to me at work too. Like, I always ask questions. I always speak up if I think something's wrong. And then people will like DM me on Slack and be like, thank you for bringing that up. I was thinking the same thing. And I'm like, bitch, so why did you not say anything? Because now it looks like I'm the only one in the whole entire company that feels this way, but we all do. And no one else is saying anything. And that is literally the most frustrating part about it, to the point where it makes you almost like not want to speak up, just to either force other people to do it or not allow other people to get the benefit of you speaking up, which I know sounds petty, but when you have been in this situation your entire life, that's kind of what it ends up being. And I just feel like when you are that person, like, you don't get rewarded for that. You might get written off. You might get reassigned on the project. You might be unfollowed on social media. You might be pushed out of a group. You might be conveniently forgotten when it comes to an invitation. And meanwhile, when you're silent, like, that just gets to protect you, and sometimes it's even celebrated. I feel like it's always easier to reward comfort than confront change, and like, I just can't live like that. And so I still am going to speak up because I don't know how to be anyone else. And I know that for a fact because, again, I've always been like this, but whenever I went to college, I had this whole plan. Like, I was going to completely reinvent myself into this new girly. I was going to be like quiet and shy and have this whole new personality. And I tried it. Like, I literally tried my hardest. Like, I consciously thought about it, and I had this list, and I made a real effort of like, this is how I'm going to behave. This is how I'm going to speak. These are the things that I'm going to do. And I was going to become this new person. And in my head, I was like, if I just practice this long enough, I'm going to one day just be this different person, and it's going to be so effortless. And it just didn't work out like that. And so that was when I think I was ready to fully embrace who I was, because I was like, okay, I tried to change it and that didn't work. And when I say change, I'm not talking about like character flaws that you literally do need to change. I'm talking about just my entire personality. Like, I've always been talkative, so my plan was like, I'm just gonna not talk as much. I'm gonna be quiet. And like, it just didn't work. And I have, even when I think about things like how people code switch, I have never done that. I promise you. Like, even at work, in professional settings, anything that I've ever done, I have never been like a code switcher, changing my behavior for different environments. I think one of the things that I have learned to do is like more of like a level thing. So, say if my personality is on a scale of 1 to 5, if I'm with my family, my friends, the people that I love, I'm going to be at a 5. But maybe if I'm with some people that I just met, I'm going to be a 3. It's still me. It's just a spectrum of me. You know what I mean? I never had to reinvent myself. I tried that one time, it didn't work. I've never had like this grand awakening where I was like shy and I decided, oh, I'm gonna start talking more. That never happened, and I feel like it cost me a lot in many situations. But I've already said this more than once. Like, I always was just like this, and I feel like the world just didn't know what to do with me yet, especially as I was younger. And I now I feel like I take a little bit more pride in like just never becoming someone else or never becoming less of me to make other people comfortable. I think it's literally what I'm most proud of. And I always say this, like, anyone in my life, so my family, my friends, my coworkers, my boss, my dog, if you asked every single one of them separately, I am 100% sure that all of them will describe me in a very similar way. Everyone gets the same exact version of me. No one gets anything different. I don't switch it for the environment. And like, I'm so proud of that. Like, at this point in my life, I'm so proud of that. It's one of the things that I'm most proud of, that no matter what life has thrown at me, no matter what situations I've been in, no matter what kind of people I have come into contact with, I have always just stayed myself. I've stayed true to myself. And I'm just really proud that, like, even when things do come at a cost, that I'm always willing to stand up for what I think is right and for what I believe in, and taking up for people who can't take up for themselves. And it makes me think of when I heard Steve Harvey talk about your gift will make room for you. And I feel like I didn't fully understand what that meant for a while. Like, I understood what it meant. I didn't understand what it meant for me. And I feel like for a really long time, to me, what now I consider my gift looks like getting suspended from school, having to have parent teacher meetings, getting side eyes from people, like constantly being told like I was doing too much, or I talk too much, or I am over dramatic, or I need to stay in a child's place, whatever. Growing up, my voice was always a problem. I don't remember anyone ever saying something like, wow, Danielle, you're gonna make a great public speaker one day. Or, wow, Danielle, with a voice like yours, you could be a news anchor. No one said, oh my gosh, Danielle, you are so outspoken and you stand up for what you believe in. You should be a politician, or you should, you know, be some type of advocate. Like, no one perceived it or encouraged it as this positive thing. It was always an issue. And I feel like, again, I was always told to like tone it down, be quiet, stop talking back. But to me, I always felt like I'm not talking back. I'm standing up for myself. Like, just because I have questions, or just because you tell me to do something and I ask why, like, that could have been a teaching moment. It didn't have to be, oh, you're talking back. And I feel like, why was it so normalized to just let kids take whatever just because someone was an adult? Like, just let adults talk to you anyway. Let them say anything to you because they were an adult. Like, I never conformed to that whole ideology. And it's crazy because when I said that I didn't understand what it meant when I heard Steve Harvey say your gift will make room for you, it's mind blowing to me now, because the exact thing that was such an issue before is literally what I get paid to do now. I have built my entire career around it, communication. Like, that's a huge non-negotiable skill for what I do and what my career is. And even with the degrees that I have a minor in communication, but also my undergrad degrees are in public relations and journalism, which those both have to do so much with communication, whether it's verbal, whether it is conflict communication, whether it's written. Like, it's all so focused on communication. And so I'm really happy that, like, I went to school and I didn't become a lawyer, but instead I went into this field that allowed me to learn more about communication and the different ways to communicate and what communication is and how you can use it as a tool. And I feel like it really taught me that I had to not just have this voice, but I had to learn to use my voice correctly, because being the loudest voice doesn't always mean you're right, which means I had to learn that, because I really did think if I just scream and yell at people, they'll have to listen. And that's not true. Winning an argument doesn't always mean that you made a difference or that you changed someone's mind. And I also just feel like too, like I used to sometimes be mean as like a defense mechanism, and that's probably deeper than what I'm even going to go into in this episode. But just because you are outspoken doesn't mean you have to be mean, and you don't have to be rude. And now I feel like I'm getting better at saying what needs to be said without hurting people's feelings. I'm still working on it, because honestly, I always tell my boyfriend about this, but you know how they always say, like, to think before you speak? That's literally not my issue. My issue is that what I have to say literally skips my brain and comes right out of my mouth. Like, it didn't even go to my brain for me to think about it, it just came out. And so that is probably something I'm always going to be working on. However, I say all that to say that now who I am so unapologetic about it. I fully tap into it. Like, it's something that me and God have really got on the same page about. I have prayed about it, because regardless of if I'm going to be the outspoken person, or I'm going to be the talkative person, or I'm going to be the loud person, or the deep person, or the truth teller, or the one who never stopped being their self no matter the cost, the person who doesn't fold. I always talk about that. I'm just so proud of every version of me who spoke up too early, or who felt too much, or who refused to conform to what society said I was supposed to be. And I still just honor the little girl in me who spoke up and who was fully herself. Like, yes, little Danielle, you better speak up for yourself. She is who got me here. And I feel like my voice is the reason that I have made it this far in life. I feel like that is the reason why I launched this podcast. It's why I've built a whole life around storytelling and telling the truth and being heard and standing up for what I believe in. I feel like now I'm just a little bit more strategic and intentional about what I say. I try to pick my battles, which work in progress. I try to be more discerning. I try to think before I speak, and I try to remember that it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And again, I'm still working on that. Like, this is all a work in progress, but I feel like now I'm able to be a little bit more accountable and understand where I go wrong or could go wrong in things that I'm saying. And obviously, there's a lot more to me and my personality than just the outspoken part and the talkative part and all of those things. But that's like what I'm focused on today when I say that I've always been myself, because I feel like that's the part that's always been an issue for other people. And yeah, like, I think I just lost my train of thought. But anyway, that is what I'm most proud of. And I think now it's just going to be like how I continue to take it forward. I obviously feel like now I'm able to get my point across a lot better than like when I was younger. I'm able to be heard. And I feel like I've also, especially like when I think of my career, built up a reputation of like, oh, she's not just saying shit just to talk. Like, the things that I do say are things that make sense, or they make a difference, or whatever the case may be. And so this one is this episode is for the people who were just a little too real too early, and the people that learned that honesty is and can cost you something, the people who survived their entire life by not becoming invisible, and the people who refuse to forget who they were. And to those people, if nobody ever told you, I see you, I honor you, I celebrate you, even if who you are is not the same as me. Like, I'm proud of you for always being yourself. And most importantly, shout out to all of the little girls, mostly the black girls, who got talks too much on their report cards, because those little girls will and have grown up to be people who challenge, who question, who rebel, who now get paid for their words. So, if you're still fighting to be yourself fully, I encourage you to keep going. I feel like the world needs more people that are just themselves and no one else. Because who the fuck wants people around that are all the same? Anywho, that was a short and sweet episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. And if this is an episode that you think will resonate with someone who maybe is struggling to be themselves or trying to figure out who they are, share this episode with them. And yeah, I would love to hear your all's thoughts. I want to hear, like, was there anything about you or your personality or who you are that was always an issue for other people or that other people didn't like? I really want to hear more about it, because I talk about how me being outspoken was always an issue, but I'm interested to see if there's other things that were an issue for other people that are who you are. Like, if you were shy, was that a big deal? Did people make an issue out of it? So let me know in the comments, DM me, whatever you feel like doing. And I think that is going to be it for this episode. So thank you again for watching. If you are watching on YouTube, please remember to subscribe. And if you are listening on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcast, and you can only hear my voice, feel free to come over to YouTube and chat there. I don't know. I feel like it's like a better experience when you can actually see the person, but do what works for you. But also leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And by that, I mean 5 stars only. However, whatever you have to say it with your chest, because we're literally talking about being outspoken here. So go for it. And yeah, follow me on TikTok and Instagram at The Subjective Pod. And with that being said, that's a wrap, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Okay, bye.